My dear brothers and sisters, let me begin by saying that life is not always moved by great winds or towering waves. Sometimes it is shifted by the quiet, consistent habits we choose to plant within our days. I once discovered, not through grand speeches nor endless philosophies, but through 5 simple habits, that a week can change the soul. Yes, just 7 days, 7 sunrises and 7 sunsets were enough to show me the power of discipline married to faith and action laced with love. My beloved, there is a holy secret hidden in the hush of the morning, a treasure that the world too often rushes past. It is the art of silence, the discipline of stillness, the choice to allow one's spirit to rest before the sun climbs high, and the noise of living begins its daily assault. I learned this secret not in the thunder of applause, not in the echo of endless conversations, but in the gentle breath of quietude. When the clock's hand had barely touched the edge of dawn, when the city was still cloaked in its blanket of sleep, I sat with myself, with my God, and with the whispers of my soul. And in that silence I found clarity. Now let me tell you, silence is not empty. Oh no, it is full of voices too tender to be heard above the roar of life, full of answers to questions you've been carrying in your chest, full of healing for wounds you did not even know were bleeding. I discovered that when I silenced the world, I could finally hear heaven. The noise of life, with its constant demands, its never-ceasing chatter, its urgency to fill every moment, had been drowning out the most important voice of all, the voice within, the voice above, the voice of God. It was in silence that I began to hear him saying, "You are enough, you are mine, you are loved." And oh, what a revolution that was. Too often we confuse silence with absence. We believe that if no one is speaking, nothing is happening. But let me assure you, silence is presence in its highest form. It is where the Creator meets creation without interference. When you sit in silence, you are not doing nothing. You are allowing something greater to be done in you. Just as the soil cannot produce fruit if the seed is never buried in quiet darkness, the soul cannot grow if it has not allowed its silent space to be nourished. Silence is the soil in which transformation takes root. In those 7 days of practice, I began each morning with no phone in my hand, no television humming in the background, no music to distract me, not even the chatter of my own anxious thoughts. I sat still. I listened. At first it felt foreign, even uncomfortable. My mind raced, my body fidgeted, as if the very act of silence were an enemy. But with patience, the noise within me quieted, and as the noise quieted, wisdom rose. I began to see that silence was not the absence of sound, but the presence of peace. And beloved, when peace enters, clarity follows. In silence I saw my worries lose their sharp edges. Problems that had seemed monstrous the night before appeared smaller in the morning's calm. My thoughts, once tangled like a ball of thread, began to unravel in gentle order. And what amazed me most was this: in silence, the answers I had been chasing for years came walking toward me with soft steps. Silence had been the midwife of understanding, birthing truth I could not deliver in the chaos of noise. I must confess I had once feared silence, for silence held a mirror, and in its stillness I was forced to face myself. It revealed my hidden sorrows, my unspoken regrets, my restless heart. But oh, my dear friends, what I discovered is that facing oneself is not punishment, it is liberation. To sit in silence is to make peace with who you are, and to invite God to mend the places you've been avoiding. Silence became my confessional, my therapy, my renewal. Think about it. The most powerful moments in life often arrive in silence. A baby's first breath does not come with a marching band. It comes in a soft cry that pierces a mother's heart. Love, when it is true, needs no shouting. It sits gently between two souls who understand one another without words. Death, too, enters quietly, not with a trumpet but with a sigh. If silence can cradle the beginnings and endings of life, why do we not honor it in our daily living? I remember sitting one morning, the dawn just beginning to paint the sky in strokes of rose and gold. The world was hushed. The birds had not yet declared their chorus, and in that sacred pause I felt as though heaven itself bent down and kissed the earth. In that silence I realized that I was being spoken to in a language deeper than words. A language of presence. A language of being. A language of love. And let me share this. Silence is not just about hearing God, it is about hearing yourself. In that stillness, I rediscovered my own dreams, long buried beneath the rubble of busyness. I remembered passions I had forgotten, wounds I had ignored, and strengths I had underestimated. Silence introduced me to myself again, not the self that performs for the world, but the self that God created in truth. When I practiced silence, my relationships deepened too. I found myself listening more intently to others, no longer rushing to fill every pause with words. I learned that silence between friends is not emptiness, it is comfort. Silence between lovers is not distance, it is intimacy. Silence between me and my God is not abandonment, it is union. My dear ones, if you want to transform your life in 7 days, begin with silence. Not the silence of neglect or avoidance, but the silence of intention. Wake each morning and give yourself the gift of 5 minutes, then 10, then 20, where the world cannot touch you. Close the door, turn off the noise, and sit with yourself and your Maker. Do not demand, do not beg, simply listen. For the God who carved rivers into stone, who painted galaxies into the night, who breathed life into dust is still speaking. And often he speaks in whispers that can only be heard in the quiet. In those 7 days, silence did more for me than 1,000 conversations ever could. It reset my spirit, refreshed my mind, and rekindled my faith. It taught me that silence is not an escape, it is an encounter. An encounter with truth, with peace, with God Himself. And if you dare to practice it, my friend, you will find yourself changed, not in years, but in days. So when the world tells you to rush, to fill every second with sound and distraction, remember this: sometimes the most revolutionary act is to be still. Sometimes the loudest prayer is silence. Sometimes the greatest growth is born in quiet. And sometimes, just sometimes, your breakthrough waits, not in the storm, but in the calm. Gratitude, my dear ones, is the song the soul sings when it finally remembers how blessed it already is. It is not the grand gestures, not the overflowing bank accounts, not the triumphs that the world parades before us. No, gratitude lives in the ordinary. It hides in the quiet blessing of breath that fills our lungs without our asking, in the steady rhythm of a heart that beats faithfully within our chest, in the sun that rises every morning though we did nothing to deserve it. Gratitude is the art of seeing what has always been there, and in 7 days of practicing it, my life began to glow with a light I did not know was waiting within me. I made a simple choice. Each morning I wrote down 3 blessings. At first they were obvious: the roof above me, the food on my table, the health of my body. But as the days passed, my eyes opened wider. I began to notice the small miracles, the way a neighbor smiled and waved, the way the breeze carried the scent of rain, the way my child's laughter filled the room with joy. Gratitude sharpened my vision until the world, which once appeared ordinary, shone with extraordinary grace. I realized then that gratitude is not about counting possessions. It is about recognizing provision. It is not about measuring wealth. It is about seeing abundance in what you already have. Do not underestimate the power of this habit. Gratitude does not change the circumstances around you. It changes you within the circumstances. A grateful heart is like fertile soil, rich enough to grow joy even in the harshest seasons. When storms came, and they surely did, gratitude became my umbrella. It did not stop the rain, but it kept me from drowning in complaint. Gratitude whispered, "Look again, even here, even now, God has not abandoned you." And suddenly what seemed unbearable became bearable, not because the weight had lifted, but because my spirit had grown stronger beneath it. There was a morning when I woke with heaviness, my heart tied with knots of worry. Bills on the table, dreams deferred, disappointments echoing from the past. Yet, as was my new ritual, I picked up my pen and wrote down 3 blessings. The first was the breath in my lungs. The second was the lesson in yesterday's struggle. The third was the possibility of today's sunrise. And as I wrote, something shifted. My troubles had not disappeared, but my vision had. Gratitude reframed the picture. What was once only lack began to reveal itself as preparation. What was once pain began to show itself as teaching. Gratitude took me by the hand and led me from despair to hope. Let me tell you this. Gratitude and bitterness cannot live in the same house. One must evict the other. When you practice gratitude, you are choosing joy over envy, peace over anger, hope over despair. A grateful heart has no room for comparison, because it is too busy rejoicing in what it already holds. And when envy tried to creep into my spirit, gratitude stood at the door like a guard, saying, "Not here, not today." In 7 days I found my spirit lighter, my smile easier, and my laughter freer, all because I had chosen to notice what I once ignored. Gratitude also drew me closer to people. I began to say thank you more often, not only to God but to those around me. Thank you to the friend who called when I was low. Thank you to the stranger who held the door. Thank you to the mother who prayed for me in silence. And what a wonder I discovered. Gratitude multiplies when it is spoken aloud. The more I gave thanks, the more blessings appeared. It was as though gratitude polished the mirror of my life until it reflected goodness back at me. And beloved, gratitude is a holy act. When we whisper, "Thank you, Lord," we are acknowledging that nothing we have is ours by right but by grace. Gratitude is the language of humility. It bows its head and says, "I did not earn this, but I receive it." And in that humility, doors open. For a grateful heart attracts more of heaven's favor, just as dry earth welcomes rain. When I lifted my hands in thanksgiving, I found blessings pouring in, not always in riches, but in peace, in strength, in courage, in opportunities I had never imagined. There were moments, too, when I struggled to find anything to be grateful for. Days when sorrow overshadowed joy, when loss cut deep. But even then, gratitude whispered, "Look closer." And I found that even in grief I could be grateful for the love I once held. Even in loneliness I could be grateful for the lessons solitude taught me. Even in failure I could be grateful for the strength to try again. Gratitude does not deny pain, it redeems it. It does not erase hardship, it transforms it. And I tell you this truth, gratitude is contagious. When you live with a grateful spirit, others around you cannot help but catch it. They see your joy, your resilience, your peace, and they ask, "What is your secret?" And you smile and say, "I count my blessings." Gratitude becomes a light in dark places, a testimony that shines brighter than any sermon. For it is one thing to say God is good, and it is another to show it by living with thanksgiving in your heart. Each night as I lay my head down, I repeated the practice. I looked back over my day, not for what had gone wrong, but for what had gone right. And in doing so, I found myself sleeping lighter, dreaming sweeter. Worry lost its grip because gratitude had already claimed the last word of my day. And when morning came, I woke not in dread but in expectation, for gratitude had trained my eyes to search for blessings yet unseen. 7 days, my friends. That was all it took for gratitude to rearrange the furniture of my soul. It moved despair out of the center and placed joy in its seat. It lifted worry from the floor and set peace upon the table. It swept out bitterness and replaced it with hope. Gratitude redecorated my heart until it looked more like a sanctuary than a prison. So I say to you, if you wish to change your life, begin by saying thank you. Say it when you rise, say it when you eat, say it when you walk, say it when you lie down to rest. Write it, sing it, whisper it, live it. For gratitude is not just a habit, it is a way of seeing. And when you learn to see with grateful eyes, you will discover that life itself is a gift too grand to ever take for granted. Movement, my beloved, is not merely the bending of the body or the flexing of muscle. It is the honoring of the sacred vessel that carries your soul through this world. Too long did I treat this body as if it were a burden, as if it were simply a shell to drag from one task to the next. But when I began to move with intention, when I began to stretch these arms, to strengthen these legs, to let my breath rise and fall in rhythm with life itself, I discovered something profound. Movement was not punishment. It was worship. It was gratitude made visible. It was a declaration that I valued this gift God had given me, this temple of flesh and bone, and I would treat it as holy. The first day I rose early to move, my body groaned, my limbs resisted, my back argued, my mind whispered excuses: stay in bed, rest a little longer. You are too tired. But I silenced those voices with a firm truth. Tiredness is not cured by more sleep alone. It is healed by the renewal of energy, and energy is birthed through movement. So I stepped out into the cool morning air and walked. Just walked. And with every step I felt the weight of yesterday loosen its grip. My thoughts, once cluttered, found order in the rhythm of my footsteps. My worries, once heavy, grew lighter with the pace of my breathing. Movement, I realized, was medicine not just for the body but for the mind and spirit. In those 7 days I treated exercise not as a chore but as communion. Each stretch of my arms was a reaching toward heaven. Each deep breath was an exchange between me and the Creator, the giving of my weariness, the receiving of His strength. Each beat of my heart reminded me that life was flowing, still flowing through my veins. And when sweat fell from my brow, I saw it not as suffering, but as the body's song of release, letting go of toxins, of tension, of yesterday's sorrow. Movement became my prayer, one that did not need words. Too many of us wait until sickness comes knocking before we honor the body. Too many of us think care for the body is vanity, when in truth it is stewardship. For what good is it to pray for long life if you do not nurture the vessel meant to carry you through it? What good is it to dream of serving others if your body cannot carry you to them? What good is it to hope for joy if your body, tired and aching, pulls your spirit down with it? In those 7 days I discovered that movement is not selfish, it is necessary. When you care for your body, you are not only blessing yourself, you are blessing everyone who depends on you. And all my dear friends, movement has memory. When I stretched my arms wide, I thought of my ancestors who bent their backs in fields but never let their spirits break. When I lifted my chin, I felt the dignity of those who walked tall even when the world tried to bow their heads. Movement connected me not only to myself but to the lineage that birthed me. It whispered that I carry within me the resilience of those who came before, and each step forward was a tribute to their endurance. The beauty of movement is that it requires no wealth, no fancy equipment, no perfect setting. It asks only for your willingness. You can move in a grand gym or on the narrow path behind your home. You can dance in your living room, sway in your kitchen, stretch beneath the open sky. The body does not ask for perfection, it asks for participation. And every time you choose to move, no matter how small the effort, you are saying yes to life. By the 3rd day I noticed my spirit rising with my body. My energy carried me into the day with strength I had not known before. My focus sharpened, my mood brightened, my laughter came more easily. Movement had tuned my body like an instrument, and suddenly my whole being was in harmony. The aches I had carried as quiet companions began to ease, replaced by a surprising vitality. I began to see that fatigue is often not a signal of needing less movement, but more. The body longs to be alive, to be engaged, to be honored through use. And there is a joy, too, in moving with others. One evening I walked with a friend and our conversation flowed as freely as our footsteps. The rhythm of our pace gave rhythm to our words, and in that simple act I realized that movement builds community. It connects souls without effort, just as dancers find one another's rhythm on the floor. Movement is not only healing, it is bonding. But perhaps the most profound lesson came on the 7th day. I stood before the mirror, my body weary from a week of stretching and walking, yet glowing with life. I touched my chest where my heart beat strong, and I whispered, "Thank you." For too long I had spoken to my body only in complaint, too slow, too heavy, too tired. But now I spoke in gratitude. Thank you for carrying me. Thank you for healing me. Thank you for not giving up on me even when I neglected you. And I realized that movement had not only strengthened my body, it had reconciled me with it. Where once there was disdain, there was now love. Where once there was neglect, there was now care. Movement had restored not only health but harmony. So I say to you, my dear ones, do not wait another day. Rise, even if only for a few steps. Stretch, even if only for a few minutes. Dance, even if no music is playing. For movement is a gift, and every time you use it, you unwrap another layer of life's abundance. Do not despise small beginnings. A short walk today may become a habit tomorrow, and that habit may carry you into strength you never imagined. In 7 days, movement reminded me that my body is not my enemy, it is my ally. It is the temple in which my spirit sings, the vessel through which I love, serve, and live. To move is to honor God, to thank Him for the breath that fills me, the bones that hold me, the muscles that carry me. And when I move, I am reminded that I am alive, and being alive is itself a miracle worth celebrating every single day. Kindness, my beloved, is a quiet force that moves like wind through the trees, gentle, unseen, yet powerful enough to shift the direction of a soul. It does not need applause, it does not ask for recognition, it does not wait for the perfect moment to perform its work. Kindness is the language of heaven spoken through human lips, the outstretched hand of God reaching into another's day. When I made kindness a deliberate habit for 7 days, my eyes opened to a truth I had long overlooked. Kindness does not only bless the one who receives it, it transforms the one who gives it. The first day I chose something simple. I smiled at a stranger in the marketplace, not a polite, fleeting curve of the lips, but a smile that said, "I see you. You are not invisible." And the way that stranger's face lit up, the way the corners of their eyes softened, told me that smile had carried weight. It was then I understood kindness need not be grand to be holy. A word of encouragement, a door held open, a patient ear, these small acts ripple far beyond the moment, echoing into hearts we may never fully know. On the second day, I picked up the phone to call a friend I had not spoken to in too long. My intention was simple: to listen. I did not rush to offer advice. I did not hurry to fill silence with words. I just listened. And in the listening, I gave a gift rarer than gold, the gift of presence. For kindness is often not in what we give, but in the way we make space for another soul to breathe. When that friend wept softly on the other end of the line, I realized that kindness is not always about solving, but about standing beside. The third day taught me a harder lesson. Kindness is not selective. It cannot only be offered to those who are easy to love, those who agree with us, those who treat us well. No, true kindness is tested when it must be extended toward the difficult, the cold, even the unkind. I crossed paths with someone who had spoken harsh words about me in the past. My instinct was to turn away, but instead I met their gaze, nodded, and wished them peace. That act did not change them, but it changed me. For kindness, I learned, is not about control, it is about freedom. It frees us from bitterness, from the chains of vengeance, from the heaviness of holding grudges. By the fourth day, kindness had become more than an action, it was becoming a way of seeing. I noticed the tired cashier whose smile was forced, and I told her, "I appreciate you." I noticed the child who lingered quietly at the edge of the playground, and I beckoned him into the game. I noticed the elder walking slowly across the street, and I slowed my own pace to match his. Kindness sharpened my vision, made me attentive to needs I had overlooked. It was as if practicing kindness cleared the fog from my eyes, and suddenly the world was filled with opportunities to bless. And my dear ones, kindness is contagious. On the fifth day, I held the elevator for a woman rushing with her hands full. She smiled in relief and thanked me. Moments later, I watched her bend down to pick up something another had dropped. And so the chain continued. A single act multiplied into another and then another. Kindness has a way of reproducing itself, of spreading without end. It is like a seed scattered on the wind. You never know where it will land, but it will surely grow. The sixth day brought me face to face with an even deeper truth. Kindness is not only outward, it must also be inward. Too often we are generous to others, but cruel to ourselves. We speak words of encouragement to strangers, yet whisper words of criticism to our own souls. So on that sixth day I practiced kindness toward myself. I looked in the mirror and said, "You are worthy. You are enough." I allowed myself to rest without guilt, to forgive my past without chains, to celebrate my small victories without shame. And in doing so, I felt a new freedom rise in me. For how can we pour kindness into others if our own cup runs dry? To be kind to oneself is not selfish. It is preparation to be kind to the world. By the seventh day, kindness had become not just a habit but a rhythm in my spirit. It was no longer about choosing a single act to perform. It had woven itself into the fabric of my being. I found myself kinder in thought, kinder in speech, kinder in action. And I realized something profound. Kindness is not a performance, it is an identity. It is not something we do, it is something we become. Beloved, let me remind you, kindness does not always look the same. Sometimes it is soft, like a gentle word. Sometimes it is strong, like standing up for someone who has no voice. Sometimes it is sacrificial, like giving when you yourself have little. And sometimes it is quiet, like holding your tongue when anger tempts you to lash out. In all its forms, kindness is divine, for it reflects the very heart of God. And hear me when I say this, kindness is never wasted. You may feel that your effort was overlooked, that your words were unheard, that your gesture was forgotten. But kindness plants seeds unseen, and those seeds bloom in seasons you may never witness. A child who receives kindness grows into an adult who offers it. A stranger uplifted by kindness carries it into their own family. A single act of kindness today may heal a wound generations from now. In 7 days of choosing kindness, I discovered that the world does not need more wealth, more power, more brilliance. It needs more hearts willing to be kind. And that is within all of our reach. You may not be able to change the whole world, but you can change the world of one person. And sometimes that is enough. So I urge you, begin with something small. Write a note. Offer a smile. Speak gently where harshness might be easier. Forgive when revenge seems justified. Rest when you are weary. And let that rest be an act of kindness to yourself. For when you practice kindness, you align yourself with the greatest truth, that love is the highest calling of humanity. 7 days was all it took for kindness to reshape me. 7 days to realize that kindness is not weakness but strength. 7 days to learn that kindness is not extra but essential. And I promise you this, if you choose kindness as a daily practice, not only will you change the lives around you, but you will find your own life lifted into a gentler, holier light. Focus, my dear ones, is the art of directing your soul toward purpose, of narrowing the beam of your attention until it shines like a torch against the shadows of distraction. In a world that screams for our time, that scatters our energy into fragments, that demands we stretch ourselves in 1,000 directions at once, focus is the quiet rebellion that says, "No, I will not be pulled apart. I will center myself on what matters, and I will not be moved." When I chose focus as a habit for 7 days, I learned that it is not simply about productivity, it is about power. It is about reclaiming the strength of a mind and heart united in purpose. On the first morning, I wrote down 3 things I would give my attention to and 3 things I would release. For too long I had carried the weight of both what mattered and what did not, all tangled together. But focus is a gardener, cutting away weeds so that fruit may grow. As I made my list, I felt a new clarity take root. I no longer owed my energy to every passing distraction, every whisper of worry, every demand placed on me by others. My energy was mine to direct, and I would offer it as an offering to what truly mattered. Focus taught me something powerful. Not everything deserves your attention. Some battles are not yours to fight. Some storms are not meant for you to stand in. Some doors are closed not because you are weak, but because they were never yours to walk through. And when I stopped scattering myself in places where my presence was not needed, I found new strength for the path that was truly mine. Focus is not only about what you choose, it is also about what you refuse. The second day, I turned off the endless noise. I silenced the phone, closed the screen, and set aside the chatter of voices that were not feeding my spirit. In that quiet, I found I could hear my own thoughts again. And not just my thoughts. I could hear God's direction. Focus is the practice of tuning your inner ear to what is essential, of listening to the still, small voice instead of the loud, clamoring world. When I let go of distractions, I discovered wisdom that had been waiting patiently for me to finally pay attention. By the third day, focus revealed itself as discipline. Oh, how tempting it was to slip back into old patterns, to give in to the easy pull of scrolling, of complaining, of dwelling on what I could not change. But focus demanded my commitment. It whispered, "Stay steady, stay faithful, stay here," and the more I obeyed, the stronger my resolve became. Focus is like a muscle. The more you practice it, the more it grows. And soon, what once felt impossible became natural. My attention no longer scattered like dry leaves in the wind. It gathered like a river, strong and steady, flowing toward purpose. The fourth day brought me face to face with fear. For focus shines a light on the things we have avoided. When you stop distracting yourself, when you stop scattering your energy, you must confront the truth of what you have left undone. And I realized that some of my busyness had been a shield, a way to avoid the hard work, the deep dreams, the difficult conversations. But focus leaves no room for hiding. It says, if this matters, give it your heart. If it does not, release it. And in that clarity I found courage. Courage to write what I had been afraid to write. Courage to speak what I had been afraid to speak. Courage to do what I had been afraid to do. By the fifth day, I saw how focus simplifies life. Decisions once complicated became clear when weighed against my true purpose. Should I spend time here or there? Should I say yes or no? Should I carry this burden or set it down? Focus answered, does it serve your purpose? Does it align with your calling? Does it bring life to your spirit? If not, let it go. And with each release, my load grew lighter. I began to walk not with the heaviness of one pulled in 100 directions, but with the freedom of one walking a clear path. The sixth day revealed to me the joy of depth. In a world obsessed with doing many things quickly, focus invited me to do fewer things deeply. I gave myself wholly to one task, one conversation, one prayer, one moment. And in doing so I tasted richness I had never known. Focus taught me that depth is more satisfying than breadth, that presence is more powerful than speed. When I stopped rushing to the next thing, I discovered beauty in the current thing. The ordinary became extraordinary because I was fully there to experience it. And on the seventh day, I looked back and saw how focus had transformed me. I was no longer scattered, anxious, restless. I was centered, steady, at peace. Focus had given me back my power, the power to direct my life, instead of being dragged through it. It had given me back my joy, the joy of seeing progress in the things that truly mattered. It had given me back my faith, the faith that if I kept my eyes on God, I could walk with confidence, no matter the storms that raged around me. Beloved, focus is not about narrowing your world until it is small. It is about sharpening your vision until it is clear. It is about learning to say, this is where I will place my heart, my time, my energy, and I will not be distracted. It is about building a life that reflects your deepest values instead of reacting to every shallow demand. And let me tell you this, when you focus, the universe responds. Opportunities align. Doors open. Strength flows. Because you are no longer scattered, you are whole. If you want to change your life in 7 days, practice focus. Choose each morning what matters most. Guard your attention as you would guard a precious jewel. Release distractions without regret. And watch as your life shifts from chaos to clarity, from noise to direction, from weakness to strength. For focus is the compass of the soul, pointing you always toward your true north. And when you hold fast to that compass, you will not be lost. You will walk steadily, purposefully, and with grace. You will find that focus does not shrink your world. It expands it because it clears away the fog and reveals the path you are always meant to walk. And once you see that path, nothing, no distraction, no fear, no doubt can keep you from it.